Thursday, the tenure of Lana Marks as the United States ambassador to South Africa ended. Now we have a new American Chargé d'Affaires, John Groarke, who joins us to tell us a little bit more about what we can expect from the world's most powerful country during Biden's next 4 years. And we are told that this is his very first South African TV debut. Great to have you, John. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Leanne, for having me on the show. It's a real pleasure to be here.
So, John, we understand that you've been with the U.S. Foreign Service in many developmental portfolios. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I'm a native of New York City. My parents were immigrants to the United States. They came to the United States from Ireland in the 1950s. So as I said, I was born and raised in New York City. I actually started my career as a lawyer on Wall Street, eventually joined the Foreign Service, and I've been with the Foreign Service for 26 years, 25 of which have been in 9 overseas postings. So I'm a real veteran, particularly of working in the developing world.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because it's important to have somebody that understands this particular market, and particularly the African continent. But in terms of your affiliation to Africa, to South Africa in particular, do you have much of a history with the country?
Not South Africa in particular. I have served in West Africa. I worked in Senegal, in Mali, and Nigeria. But about 3.5 years ago, I came here to South Africa. It was my first adventure here, but I have learned a lot about South Africa over the last 3.5 years. And it's been a fascinating experience, a very rewarding experience, and one which I'll never forget.
When did you arrive in South Africa, by the way?
In June of 2017.
So you've been here the entire time. So you've been working, obviously, in the embassy. So since 2017, you've been here in South Africa.
That's
great.
Yes.
Great. Well, then I suppose you're a perfect fit to be the person to be the Chargé d'Affaires for now. Obviously, there's a lot of changes that we can expect now that there's a new head of office. There's a new man in town. Lana Marks, the previous ambassador in the role, was she did. We'll give her credit for the many community engagements that she did, also helping, particularly at the time with COVID, getting ventilators for people suffering from COVID. What does your new mission to South Africa have in store for us?
Well, Leanne, it's very important to note, although there have been changes in leadership, both in Washington and here in Pretoria, the mission of the United States government here remains unchanged. It's very much business as usual, continuing to work in a variety of sectors to improve our relationship with South Africa, and even more importantly, to work together on some very important common objectives like controlling the COVID-19 pandemic.
Which, of course, is a huge priority, and we see that happening. We ran a story this morning in the news looking at how things are changing in the US and how there are many more tighter restrictions, including a travel ban on non-US citizens from South Africa. That, of course, is now getting, of course, the embassy a bit, I imagine, running as you get into office there because of this new strain here in South Africa. What has this done? Perhaps you can explain it a bit further. So, from what we understand, is that South Africans that are not US citizens are not allowed to enter the US.
Well, it's basically anyone who's not a US citizen who's traveling to the United States from South Africa. So if a South African citizen wanted to travel to the United States from another location, they very well might be able to do so. It's important to note that this temporary measure is consistent with what the United States has done in the past. For example, the United Kingdom, Ireland, the European Union. It's basically a science and evidence-based reaction so that we collectively can get the COVID-19 pandemic under control. And I'm confident that as we proceed with mitigating the virus, introducing a vaccine, we will get the pandemic under control, and these types of restrictions will no longer be necessary.
Yeah. Let's perhaps talk a little bit to the different plans that are in place for South Africa and Africa under the Democrats. We know that under the Trump presidency, there was really not much about Africa on the radar under the Trump presidency. In fact, when we did hear from former President Donald Trump about South Africa, they weren't too kind, the words that he had uttered, unfortunately. But what does it look like under a Democrat leadership? Obviously, we've been there before, but perhaps you can remind us what it'll be like.
Well, I'm excited about the prospects for South Africa and Africa as a whole under the Biden administration. You probably know that President Biden has a long history of engagement with South Africa, even during the apartheid era, where he spoke out strongly against apartheid and advocated for policies that would bring change here to South Africa. So I'm confident that you're going to see very keen engagement, not only, for example, in the health sector, but also in the economic sector, in the cultural sector. You just wait and see. We're going to see a lot of engagement from this new administration.
Yeah, certainly we will. I imagine, however, it'll be a little bit down the line because there's a lot on Biden's plate right now. I mean, we've already seen him, signing back into, things that had been pushed to the side, like the Paris climate change, and also once again rejoining the battle with the World Health Organization when it comes to coronavirus. Now, that in itself is a big plus for Africa and the continent because of, the whole issue with the World Health Organization. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about this.
Well, as you just noted, President Biden has announced that the United States will rejoin the World Health Organization, and he also announced that the United States will now engage with the COVAX Multilateral Alliance, which is expediting the development and manufacture of COVID-19 vaccines. And this demonstrates President Biden's commitment to multilateralism, to coming up with joint and cooperative efforts to address COVID-19, not only here in South Africa, but throughout the world. And of course, the World Health Organization is playing a leading role in both the development of a new vaccine and its manufacture and distribution throughout the world. So this is a very important development for all of us.
It really is. But I mean, on the top of the agenda for Biden is, of course, coronavirus. And I think perhaps we can spend a little bit of time talking about that. We obviously spoke about the travel restrictions for South Africans to the US. I mean, we are included in a list of 27 other countries, so we're not on our own. But what is the plan to stem the spread of coronavirus in the USA? I mean, as we can see, the Trump administration didn't fare too well in this regard. Over 25 million cases, 420,000 deaths through the trajectory. And this is quite a big battle that he's got on his hands, even though we are seeing that curve falling at the moment.
Well, first of all, it's important to note that over the last 12-month period, the United States has invested about 700 million rand here in South Africa to combat the COVID virus. And this included, as you mentioned earlier, Leanne, the 1,000 state-of-the-art ventilators that were delivered beginning last May, as well as personal protective equipment and a state-of-the-art field hospital, which has now been deployed to Mafeking. But the United States is also working very closely with its South African colleagues to develop a vaccine under Operation Warp Speed, which is the United States initiative to develop a vaccine. What we're seeing with President Biden is an acceleration of these efforts, and much of it is based on science-based evidence. We know more now how to address the COVID pandemic. And President Biden is taking advantage of that experience and that knowledge to bring results faster.
Yeah. Closing borders, is that perhaps in his plans that you know of? Put the country in a complete lockdown, possibly overriding the power of the 50 states? Could this be something you may see happening in the US?
Well, Leanne, I really don't know any more about that than you do.
Yeah.
I do know that President Biden is taking this extremely seriously, as he should, and we would all hope that the measures that are being taken now would be sufficient to mitigate the effects of the virus. If it doesn't, we can only speculate as to what actions may take place in the future.
Yeah, yeah. The US economy, of course, has suffered because of COVID-19. I mean, we've looked at statistics coming out. I know that this is from the International Labour Organization. I mean, this is part of the UN saying that through calculations, it looks like 255 million jobs have been lost globally because of the coronavirus. I mean, this is quadruple the amount that happened during the financial crisis almost a decade ago. And I mean, this is something that is going to be a very big issue to get over, and we are not even close to being over it right now. With the US suffering, as the saying goes, when the US sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold, barring China, of course. I mean, Trump had harsh words for China, but it seems Biden wants to mend the ties. Talk to us about those relations.
Well, there's no doubt, excuse me, as you just said, there was a fierce competition between the United States and China during the prior administration. And I know that the Biden administration is now formulating its relationship with China. It's probably not going to be exactly what we saw in the last administration. But as you noted earlier, Leanne, we're in the very early stages of the Biden administration. So it remains to be seen precisely what its policy will be towards China.
Yeah. Just one or two more questions. The plans to navigate complexities in the Middle East. That is something I imagine is a big situation. I mean, it's something where, you know, Trump has quite cozy relations with Russia, with Israel and Saudi Arabia. I mean, he even got the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain to sign diplomatic ties with Israel. However, Iran seems that, you know, will have friendlier relations with the US, and I don't know if that'll go well with the Arab states. I mean, what's your interpretation there?
Well, again, it's very early in this administration. As you note correctly, the United States has a long history of engagement with the Middle East. The United States remains committed to its friendship with Israel, but it also remains committed to bringing a comprehensive peace. And I'm sure that President Biden and his new foreign policy team, as we speak, are formulating policies that will promote those objectives.
Very quickly, this is now in the news. We won't talk to Russian relations. I imagine that your answer will be very much the same. It's still early to tell, and that's things we need to see developing as the days and months tick by. But what we do know is happening now. The Democrats are planning to go ahead with the impeachment of Trump after that January 6 insurrection on Capitol Hill. How exactly is this going to work? Impeachment of a president who is no longer sitting in office. What is the hope that'll be achieved?
Well, the objective is to potentially have a trial in the Senate now that the House has voted to impeach, and that is an issue that will be resolved in the coming weeks. As we know, it appears that the Senate trial has been delayed, and we'll just have to see how the process plays itself out. This is a part of America's constitutional checks and balances to ensure accountability at all levels of government, and these issues are being discussed and resolved as we speak. And just like you, I anxiously await how this will play out in the coming weeks.
Yeah. All right. Just finally, Kamala Harris, the vice president. There's so much excitement around her. We all know that. That would be an amazing thing to actually see somebody like her maybe taking that seat of office as well, being the first president, female president of the U.S. Do you foresee that in your crystal ball?
You know, I see the elevation and election of Kamala Harris as having a very important symbolic value. It shows that despite our shortcomings as a nation, we still have a lot to be proud of. And we have a lot to say about a fair and equitable and just society. And when I see the progress that we have made in my lifetime I'm very proud to see that somebody like Kamala Harris can be elected vice president. And this is only the beginning. We have a long way to go, but we're going to continue to progress, just as South Africa continues to progress, because we do have that shared element in our history.
We'll leave it there for this morning. Thank you. Thanks, John. Thanks for talking to us. Nice to virtually meet you. And we look forward to chatting to you. And of course, we'll see when a new ambassador comes. Any news on that? Well, that's, again, still far too early to even talk about.
It is, Leanne, it is far too early, but I'm confident that the Biden administration will make it a priority to bring an ambassador out to South Africa.
Good.
It's only a question.
When and they won't wait 2 years or even more like they did during the Trump time. So hopefully we'll see that position being filled quite soon. U.S. Chargé d'Affaires?
Indeed.
John Groarke, thanks for joining us, talking to us about relations between the U.S. and South Africa under the new presidency. That, of course, is the Biden administration. Tweets. We got time. Let's go.